Free Speech Northwest is brought to you by Ticklicker Firearms at 4570 Commercial Street Southeast, Salem, Oregon 97302. Keeping Salem, Oregon safe, one firearm sale at a time. Free Speech Northwest is brought to you by Adams Ribs Smokehouse, located at 1210 State Street, Salem, Oregon 97301. Hey, I'm Casey Okupi.
And I'm Justin Robick.
This is Free Speech Northwest. It's a show, it's political, okay? We'd like to get different angles on political topics, and we like to go to the source and some people who are knowledgeable in those areas. So we're talking about rallies and protests, and we have some exciting guests today. We have Patriot Prayer, and we also have Portland's Resistance on the show. So great.
I'm excited.
Yeah, you're excited?
Yeah.
I think it's a good thing. Yeah, so, all right. We'd like to welcome Joey Gibson from Patriot Prayer right now. What are you all praying about? What's it about, Patriot Prayer?
A lot of people think it's all political, but actually a big part of it's about culture, trying to change culture on the West Coast.
Okay. You want to change culture on the West Coast. What are you seeing in the West Coast in regards to culture? Like, what can change?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with mass hysteria. It's the mob mentality is what I'm seeing a lot. We have these people that run around, for example, and they'll just scream racist or Nazi, and then this crowd, this mob will just chase them down. They don't even know who they are. It's crazy. I see it all the time on the streets.
Okay.
It's insane. And it's also about kind of exposing the hypocrisy and kind of exposing some of the lies and the deception. For example, one thing that I'm really big about, thing that's really important to me, is that we have too many people who want to fight hate with hate, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves. I'm here to say that hate is wrong 100% of the time. So if you're running around screaming and cussing at people and getting in their face, like, I'm here to say that's bad. You know, let's not do that. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk. Let's work things out. And so, and there's just so many cultural things that I wish we can get, especially honesty. We've lost honesty. We don't even respect it anymore as a culture. We see politicians, media, you know, just any random people lie all the time, and we just let it go.
How can you tell? Like, how can you tell the difference when it comes to honesty and everything? Like, how do you know? Like, what tools do you use to know, okay, this person's lying to me? Like, what should I do to determine? Like, if I watch a news show, there's different networks, you know, there's Fox, there's CNN, there's all these different networks, and they'll say two different things. Like, how do you know what's true?
Well, I know when people say things about me, whether it's true or not. When Nancy Pelosi calls me a white supremacist, then that's a lie. Like, you know, that's pretty easy for me to determine. What you're asking, though, is that, you know, when she calls Will Johnson a white supremacist, like, that's a lie, especially since he's black. But I think that what you're asking is at a street level, if you're just talking to someone, how to determine if they're lying or not, I don't know. That's not really my expertise. But I do know that a lot of people lie all the time. And it's something, in the last few years, I've been working on that with myself, especially since I'm in real estate. I started to try to catch myself every single time that I was going to say, like, a white lie, and we all do it. You're late somewhere. They ask, why are you late? You know, it's like, oh, because of traffic or this, that, you know, like, and instead of just being like, I woke up late, you know, like, just own it. Yeah. And so I think that's something where over the last few years when I started to try to change that and catch myself, you know, that's when I started to realize that it's a big part of our culture because we're so fake. We have so many things about this culture, and maybe it's just human nature, but where we want to put on this facade, you know. And so that's something that I really want to change. I think people are thirsty for people who are genuine. I think that's why, say what you want about Trump, okay? Say what you want. You can hate him, you can love him, but I think it's fair to say that he says what's on his mind, you know, and people are thirsty for that. And so that's something that I think is really important. That's what Patriot Prayer is about, and that's what I'm passionate about.
I like that. That's funny. So we're acknowledging Trump is Trump. You know what I mean? President Trump, when he's on camera and everything, that's all him. He's not putting on airs.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. And so that's part of your mission is to be real, legitimate.
Yeah, and people can feel that. People can feel that. And that's why, you know, politicians are notorious for being so fake and being so, because they just, for them, it's like, you know, they have all the the research and the polls and all that stuff, and they want to know all the questions before they go and do interviews. Like, to me, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Because they need to plan ahead of time. What are we going to say if they ask this and that?
Counter
Yeah,
answers.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
They can't just speak, and that's one of the biggest problems that we have. And that's why I say Patriot Prayer is a cultural thing, because too many times I thought this for a long time. I used to believe that we need to change our government to change our culture. But it's actually the opposite way around. Our government reflects our culture. We change our culture, then our government will follow. That's what I'm starting to understand. So if for example, we can't get our government to convince our culture that freedom is really important, okay? We have to convince our culture that freedom is really important, then we'll begin to elect the right people. That's the way I'm starting to look at it. And so that's what I'm telling you, we overlook the cultural fight, the cultural battles way too much.
Why does our culture want to be like, I don't know, intellectually dishonest or deceived or fooled? Like, I don't know, is it easier? I think they're lied to. I think the culture is lied to by a lot of people, and they're not told the truth from a lot of mainstream sources. And it's a morality thing, right? They're saying, believe this or you're immortal. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of people, they're fed this narrative, whatever it may be, okay? It could be anything. And, I'm a psychology major, and the one thing that I realized more than anything is that our brains do not like to receive information that contradicts what our brain believes. And it's a big problem with humans. We believe in something and we feel comfortable with that narrative, and we let all the information that verifies what we believe come in, but we block everything out. And it's a big problem. And so we have an issue with just opening our minds and just admitting the fact that 90% of the stuff we believe is probably a lie. There's so much out there. There's so much knowledge. There's so much about this culture, our country, our government. Like, there's so many things to learn. And I think that a lot of Americans in this country are barely even scratched the surface. We spend all our time working, watching TV, watching football, and that's like the extent of, that's how deep most of our lives go, unfortunately.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're talking about depth of people's lives and everything. I think people get really heated politically, and I don't have to tell you, right? And then, all of a sudden you've got all these friends, and then out of nowhere you don't have any friends anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, should we be losing friends based on our political view, or is it that important? It is important, you know what I mean? How does that work? I don't know. It's kind of a vague question, but I mean, I want people to be able to listen to me, listen to you, and then understand that you're not coming from a place of moral hatred, and it's not that. It's how you understand things, and we all want what's best for the world, the United States. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's done on purpose. I believe wholeheartedly that they've made this culture and this system, this political system, to divide America. And it's been done on purpose. Republican, Democrat, or whatever. And it's almost like, because it's starting to change, but it's almost like if you're a Democrat, then you need to worship every single Democrat and hate every single Republican, right? And I've noticed that. Now it's not even that. Now it's like the Trump is what's dividing it now. So it's like you need to be friends with every single Trump supporter if you're a Trump supporter, and hate hate everyone else, or vice versa. And that's done on purpose. Lots of people have lost friends who support Trump, like a lot. I've seen it, and it's unfortunate. And it's two things though. It's the person who is speaking and the person who's listening. So if you're speaking in a way that's annoying and that's intense, not just intense, but just is degrading and stuff, that's part of the problem, because people get real passionate, right?
Yeah.
They feel like they have to convince you. That's one of the biggest problems. Yeah. You feel like you have to convince the person that you're talking to so that they agree with what you believe and what you say, and that's a big problem. And then the person listening, a lot of times they get defensive and they get upset and they get angry. And so
I think it's like I was saying, like the morality thing, like you believe this, you believe me, or there's something, like, why are you full of hate? You know what I mean?
I also realized too that it's helped me a lot since I quit fighting those battles. I don't care who people are going to vote for. I don't care. I really don't. And no one really cares what I think either. Like, no one cares if someone hates Trump. No one cares if I'm going to stand up for Trump or not. Like, it doesn't matter. And it accomplishes nothing. Now, when it comes to 2020, you know, an election rolls along, that's kind of different. But for right now, I think we all need to just let go of all this hatred and this anger, especially about Trump or these other things, and just focus on more important things. Because, like, it doesn't matter how much you hate Trump or how many rallies you have against Trump or this or that. Like, it's not going to do anything. You know what I mean? 2020, okay, maybe we can talk about that. But, like, seriously, like, right now, all you're doing is dividing America. And the second, and I've taken a step back, and I've honestly said, and I'm going to analyze what Trump has done in 2020. I don't worship him. I don't worship any politician, and I care about results. I don't care about all the speeches. I don't care about all the rhetoric on the left or the right. What I want to see is our government smaller. Is there less regulations? Is the middle class growing? Or is the rich just getting richer like it has been in the last 20 years, and the poor getting poorer, you know, like it has in the last 20 years? That's what I care about. But as soon as I stop fighting those battles, talking about Trump this or Trump that or whatever, you know, it brought in a lot of people because they're sick of it. They're sick of the whole arguing and all that stuff. But there are people who don't like Trump, but they do believe in freedom, and they believe in free speech. You know, like there's a lot of Bernie supporters who are pissed off at the system, just like Trump supporters. They pretty much, Hillary Clinton stole it from Bernie Sanders, and they're feeling the pain right now. And they're starting to get on board. They're starting to understand, you know, what Patriot Prayer is really about.
That's something that confuses me, because, you know, they've stated, you know, Hillary stole this election and everything. And if you go to Hillary Clinton and you're like, you got those questions in advance and you cheated and you did this and that, and then she's all like, yeah. You know, she's like,
it's the elitist attitude.
And, you know, please continue.
Don't
with
forget
your
the super delegates too. The super delegates.
But so, yeah, I don't know. I'm surprised. You know, Bernie is all like, that wasn't nice, or like, shame on you, or you know what I mean. It's like that made me lose a little bit of personally. I lost a little respect there. You know what I mean? Because I was a Bernie guy like a long time ago, and then I saw Hillary took everything from him, and then his reactions and all this other stuff, and it just, I don't know. I lost a lot of faith in that direction myself. That's just a personal thing.
Me too.
Yeah. Now, Gregory.
What's up?
Thank you for joining us.
Of course. It was a long drive.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
No, it's longer from Washington, but...
Yeah, it probably a little bit longer for Joey. Now, we asked Joey earlier, what is Patriot Prayer? And what we'd like to ask you, what's Portland's resistance? What do you do? What are you resisting?
The Donald Trump administration, really the policies that I think that a majority of the people of Portland obviously disagree with. We overwhelmingly voted against Donald Trump. So, you know, I've never been a huge states' rights guy, but if we're going to be, now is the time. So if we are going to insulate ourselves from the policies of Donald Trump, not with borders and walls, but with policies of our own, it's going to take a strong resistance. We believe in a nonviolent resistance, but it's more than just street protest. Street protest gets us the coverage and oftentimes gets us the membership, but we spend most of our time drafting policy proposals. Our healthcare proposal comes out in about a week or so. We've drafted a criminal justice platform. We have about 80 central committee members, 7 organizing committee members, that is a majority women of color. We do houseless outreach, we do self-defense classes, all these types of things. So really, we want to infuse ourselves into the political process and learn a little bit from the right and become sort of the Tea Party of the left.
Okay. So you want to learn a little bit from the right. What are they good at over there?
Tweeting.
Tweeting?
Yeah, they're good at tweeting, and they're good at overtaking an establishment party. So they have the Republican Party, and then you have the Tea Party comes and overtakes the Republican Party. Maybe they are still battling it out within the party, but we are nowhere close to that. In the Democratic Party, on the left side of politics, we still have the left side of politics being run by establishment people, by an establishment party, and I think that atmosphere leads to electing a Donald Trump when we have a party that most people can't really trust.
Okay, so you have a party that most people can't really trust, that's what you're saying?
I think on the left side of politics, our political party is ran by an establishment that a lot of people don't trust. And I think the same is true on the Republican Party, except for the right has done a better job than we have of infusing the actual party with populism and ground level support. And I think that's something that we can learn from and is necessary if we are going to have a system in which we can differ upon ideas. But I think everybody agrees that money shouldn't be running our politics. I think everybody agrees we shouldn't be having to brawl in the streets. America is about disagreeing with each other, and we should be able to have these policy discussions, but we can't have these policy discussions when our political parties are not representing how we feel. And those are the ones that are dominating the conversation, especially nationally and in the media.
Okay, the political parties that are not representing how you feel. What do you think? Do you come from a perspective that's a little more right, Joey?
People tend to
what kind
do
of
that,
right?
But not not at all. I mean, there's a lot of things that Gregory just said that I agree with. It's the establishment that I have a huge problem with, the right and the left. I do believe there's more of a revolution on the Republican side right now. They're fed up, they're done. That's where Trump came from. I mean, that's obviously whether you like him or not, that's the truth. On the left, I think that was building with, Sanders, even though he is an establishment figure, but that was building with Sanders, and then they stole it from him. Super delegates need to go. That's ridiculous. They got to go, and I'll help support that. Do anything to get rid of the establishment. Money is a big problem with politics. And also for me, we need term limits. We have to have term limits because the longer that someone is in office, the higher of a probability that they will become corrupt, blackmailed, or something. And then once they're corrupt, they're bought and paid for, the next 20 years, they're going to be throwing the American people under the bus. So.
Yeah, I love and hate money, that whole thing. What do you think about term limits?
I don't think that it's a major issue for me. I think that when we talk about term limits and why they are needed, we're really still talking about money and how money can corrupt. And I think if we remove money from the political discussion and from running our politics in general, that the need for term limits goes down. I think that there are people within Congress that are good people. And I think that I trust the voters enough to, in their own municipalities, to be able to vote for somebody that represents their interests, but it's hard to be able to do that when you have big money against you.
The problem with that, though, is, if you trust the voters, then you should trust the fact that they voted for Trump. But the problem with what you're saying is that there's too many criminals out there. So if, let's say you find some magical way to get money out of politics, politicians will still be bought and paid for behind closed doors. And so that's the problem. So that's why a company can invest a bunch of money in one man because they know that he'll get them reelected for 40 years. That's the problem. So people come in, they come out, do their thing. It's hard to corrupt them. It's hard to get control of these people. And so that's why term limits are really important, in my opinion.
Personally, I think I support term limits, but I had a question. We're talking about, who everyone voted for. Trump is our president, President Trump. And, you're saying most people did not vote for Trump. And but he is our president.
Especially in Portland and in America, most people did not vote for Donald Trump. But yes, he is
okay. So he didn't get popular vote. So let's take a look at that. Popular vote. What is your thought on popular vote versus the what is that called?
The Electoral College.
Electoral College. Yeah.
I prefer a popular vote. I see the need for an electoral college, especially if we're talking about colonies in which Rhode Island wouldn't want to be dominated by the policies of New York when we have 13 colonies. I think that the need for that has disappeared in many levels. I don't think that getting rid of the Electoral College is something that we should be focusing our energy on. I think that this election, the Democrats lost it by not campaigning in the right states, by running a candidate that was very unpopular, and that's what we should be talking about rather than the system screwing them over. Although I do support a popular vote system, it would take so much work to get there, and I think that work could be better spent elsewhere.
Okay. What are your thoughts on popular vote versus Electoral College?
For me, it's just I get nervous about the whole 51% beats 49%. That's a concern for mine. I do believe that there's a lot of states that will get underrepresented. So, It just concerns me because obviously some of these high population areas, the electoral college kind of limits their power on the country. And so I think that's something I'm for. I think it's part of the Constitution. But, you know, it's not something I'm going to yell and scream and fight about.
All right. So, Gregory, now I wanted to ask you, is there a negative element when, because I've seen, you know, the Portland's Resistance site on Facebook and everything, and they talk about Patriot Prayer sometimes. We talk about the events they're holding. Do you feel, so I'm getting a little into the groups here, that there's an element or an aspect that's brought to these rallies that are held by Patriot Prayer that's like a negative element?
Absolutely. I think that, you know, I don't believe that Joey Gibson is necessarily a white supremacist. I definitely do not believe he's a neo-Nazi or a Klan member or anything like that. But I can say that if you are a neo-Nazi, you're more likely to go to a Patriot Prayer event than you are to go to a Portland's Resistance event, and we've documented this. We've seen people that have views that are counter to, I think, what a majority of Americans feel, that have attended these rallies, and I've attended some of Joey Gibson's rallies and listened to the rhetoric, and I think that a majority of Americans, if they heard that, would not be supporting it.
Okay, and do you feel that Joey has like a responsibility in regards to what you're saying?
It's hard because to compare organizations is so different. So our organization is ran by an 80-member central committee body. It's very democratic and horizontal, in which people are voting on things. We have weekly meetings that are open to the public. So it's very hard for me to say how one person should run an organization, right? Because I don't know their voting structure, I don't know their meeting structure, I don't know anything like that. And I also don't, it's not easy to just kick out a neo-Nazi once they get pointed out to you within your group. So I wouldn't know how to do that because it doesn't happen to us. So I don't know how to remove somebody that is obviously a white supremacist from your rally. I do think that there's a responsibility to address it and a responsibility to make sure that they're not welcome there, but not just the individuals themselves, but the rhetoric. So if I'm not a self-avowed white supremacist, if I'm not a self-avowed neo-Nazi, but I hold 90% of the same views as a white supremacist and a neo-Nazi, that needs to be called out as well.
All right, that's interesting. How can you definitively decide if you hold out the same views, like 90%? Do you notice that neo-Nazi or a white supremacist or something would be more likely to go to a Patriot Prayer event? And do you feel there's a responsibility that you have in reference to that sort of thing?
I think that there's an absolute responsibility for all of us to call out the extremists on both sides, absolutely. If you walk around and pretend like the whole world is dirty and there's nothing on your shoulders, you know, that's the big problem. We have to understand, communism, Nazis, all the alt-right, the alt-left is a major problem right now. And you know, he rolls around with a bunch of communists and Antifa, and he never calls them out. I don't understand why. Okay, and that's part of the problem. I'll call out Nazis, white supremacists all day long. I have no issue with it, no problem. But we both have to take responsibility for our own groups and look at the extremists in both of them. And we got to call them out. We have to. It's not okay. I understand there's good members of Antifa, but it's not okay for a lot of them are communists, and we have to understand what Stalin did. It's just as bad as what Hitler did. It's just as bad. It's a big problem. It's big government, and it's called killing people. That's a problem, and we have to speak out against it. I'm against communism. I'm against Nazis. I'm against all forms of tyranny, and I don't like it. And I follow Jesus. I believe in love, and I do not believe that we should disrespect someone else because of the color of their skin, their sexuality, their gender, whatever, because Jesus didn't care. And so we got to call this out. I've done it numerous times, and I will continue to do it, but you got to do the same.
So what about the street preachers that go yelling at homosexuals and stuff that you defend?
I don't defend them. I disagree with their tactics, but I care about them and I love them, and they don't have a racist bone in their body. They are against homosexuality. I'm not.
You just said that. Okay.
I don't care. I can care because I'm a libertarian. I don't care who you sleep with. Even as a Christian, it's not my place to tell. It's between that person and God.
But would you consider them, the street preachers, extremists?
They are extremists in several
So
matters.
you said
yeah,
we
and
need
I'll
to be
call them
calling.
out.
Okay.
Yeah, and I've been honest about it. And like I said, I went down to that Pride Festival and I shouldn't have done it. And so, but I'm honest and I'm open about. I'm learning. I'm growing. But and this is in the public eye. But I will continue to say what's in my heart, and I'll be genuine about it. Okay. But we got to have an honest conversation. Why does Portland support communism, but against why do people support Stalin, but they freak out about Hitler?
I don't think you have to support, there's many different forms of communism, especially in practice. I don't think that anybody that is a self-avowed communist believes that Stalin was the epitome of what communism should be, and I think that a majority of
Can you say the same thing about Hitler?
What?
Can you say the same thing about Hitler?
No, Hitler is what fascism is.
Can you say it wasn't the right kind of fascism? Like there's better fascism? Like if someone else was... That's all I'm saying.
No,
You're
because
saying
fascism, by its nature, is already calling for the extermination of certain people and wants certain people to not have rights.
Which is what Stalin did.
Communism is a policy that... Okay, but I'm not advocating for Stalin. I'm not a Stalin fan.
Fascism is more of a way that you execute that political system that you're using. So communism isn't fascism. You may use fascism to, add to the communist side of things.
It's a change of rhetoric is all it is. But you're still murdering millions of people. It's just it's just an excuse. It's a change instead of
It's
murdering
a false equivalency. I mean, there are bad people on all sides. There are bad Republicans. There are bad Democrats. There's bad communists. There's good people on all sides. I would say that there's very few good fascists. And I think that there are people that hold an ideology that you might consider communism, where they think that society should have a responsibility to take care of the least of these, that society should have a responsibility to hold up people, especially in the wealthiest country in the history of the world, that we shouldn't have homeless people on our streets, that we shouldn't have people that are dying because they can't afford health care. And so you might call that communism and compare that to Stalin, but I think a majority of the people that are following our side of the political spectrum actually just want to make sure that the least of these are taken care of, and they believe that America has the resources to do so, and instead of giving major tax breaks to incredibly large corporations or sending people to fight abroad to kill black and brown people across the country or across the world, that we should instead be investing in our people to make sure that everybody has a standard of living that is acceptable in the richest country in the history of the world.
So what about the hammer and sickle flag?
I don't know why your side gets so caught up on flags. I don't care about any flag.
So you don't care about a Nazi flag?
I care about the Nazi ideology in that respect.
So it's not going to bug you if you see a Nazi flag on the streets of Portland?
No, I care about the Nazi ideology that is attached to that flag. I don't care about the ideology that is attached to a flag that says that we should be taking care of people.
Like the hammer and sickle flag?
You're not going to find me with a hammer and sickle
But you're
flag.
around a lot of people that fly it.
I know that.
I think that most of the people that you think are actually communists are actually anarchists, and I don't consider myself an anarchist.
Is not anarchy.
I know,
that's
I think
Stalin's
that
flag.
I know, but you're trying to say that that like Antifa is made up of communists, and I actually think that Antifa is probably made. Well, then why do you keep bringing up communism?
Because you roll.
Gregory,
I've seen you walk
Joey.
around with a lot of communists. So I'm just asking.
I don't know
question.
not one self-avowed communist.
So
Gregory.
what about the hammer and sickle flag?
I have not
Stalin's
walked
flag?
around with Stalin's flag. I don't.
But does
I
that
don't
bug you
understand
that-
why I'm attached to the Stalin flag.
Let me ask a question. Okay, we got to pause. We got to break. All right, good, cool. Now I'm going to ask you a question.
Sure.
I'm thinking that if there's a Portland's Resistance on the Facebook and everything, if somebody sees a Nazi flag at Joey's event, then there's going to be a lot of talk about how there were a lot of Nazis there, not Nazi ideology, right? Like there were a lot of
No, it's
Nazis
both.
that went to this event.
It's both. I mean, I'm not so caught up on the symbolism of things. I'm caught up on the policies that people are pushing for.
Okay, because I know that I've checked out a couple events that Joey's put on, and I haven't heard a lot of Nazi ideology. Have you heard some ideology that came from
I've heard things that could lead to fascism, yes. It's nationalism. You're a nationalist, right?
It's hard to say. I mean, not in all matters.
Okay,
I mean, I
what's
do believe-
bad about nationalism?
I think that a pride in what your country does, no matter what your country is doing, is dangerous. I think that nationalism historically has led to fascism, and I think fascism and nationalism have gone hand in hand and lead to things like deporting millions of workers that we have here. I think that nationalism is the opposite of small government, which they claim to be for, where we're rounding up and deporting workers, we're building walls. This is not small government at all.
Okay. Now, nationalism, is nationalism, like, can you be a nationalist but not think that every single aspect of the country is perfect or right? Like, can you say, I'm a nationalist, but there are some things that I don't like, you know? I mean, I don't think that completely encompasses
Okay, but we're
you.
talking about what you are describing as yourself. So I think that most people are not self-describing neo-Nazis, but might still hold policies that neo-Nazis hold. I think that a lot of people are not self-describing fascists, but would be quite all right with fascism taking hold in America. So it's not just what you call yourself, it's what you do. And I think that if we somehow enacted all of the policies that maybe Patriot Prayer pushes for, it would look a lot more like fascism than what we want to do, which is take care of the least of these in our society.
What kind of policies?
You tell me, what's your policies?
Well, you just said you believe.
But you're right
that
here,
it's
so you can speak for yourself.
What are some common Nazi policies that you see, or fascist policies that are common out there that are like a problem?
White Christianity being the dominant culture that should take hold in this country.
What about Christianity without the white part?
That's not okay. We have a separation of church and state.
Okay, so you're saying that there's a lot of speaking out about Christianity involved with our government and everything at this point.
Sorry, say that again?
There's a lot of, in our government, there's a lot of interjecting Christianity, and that's a problem.
I think that's a problem. I think that the demographics that they have within their movement is also a problem. I think that the policies that they push for when we're talking about deportations, when we're talking about how they think that protesters on our side should be treated. So they had a rally one time, and then police attacked a march or a rally that I was in, and they started yelling USA, 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 while we have flashbangs thrown from the police into the streets of Portland. And I think that there's no better picture of what they view USA should be as our side getting beat up and the cops facing our side while defending their rights. I think that these people believe in small government for themselves and big government for everybody else. So we're going to tell a woman what she should do with her own body. We're going to we're going to round up and deport workers. We're going to tell people who they can marry or even love. We're going to do all these things and then call it small government. We're going to give big tax breaks to corporations, and we're going to send millions of dollars overseas to bomb Black and brown people, and we're going to call that small government, but we are totally okay when you get beat up in the streets for doing what we want to do in the same streets.
Okay, are you seeing that police and government are, attacking this group while at the same time, people are chanting USA, but is there something happening on Patriot Prayer that's similar to that?
In terms of that specific example, he's talking about June 4th when people started throwing stuff at the police and started breaking the law. And throwing balloons filled with feces and urine, and so they did clear out that park. We weren't throwing stuff at the police, so they didn't clear us out. So that doesn't mean that there's not a problem with police brutality and police being too powerful in certain parts of the country. But that's a bad example, because if you attack the police, they're going to clear out the park.
Sure,
I mean, that's the law.
I didn't attack the police, so you haven't been to law school, I'm sure, but the Constitution works in that they are individual rights, okay? So what if I said because there was a murder last night, I'm going to kick and pepper spray and beat anybody who exercises their Second Amendment rights because somebody messed up? That wouldn't make sense because those are individual rights. So if I am at a park and I am not committing a crime, you don't get to take away my First Amendment rights because somebody next to me messed up. The First Amendment says nothing about proximity to somebody who has done something. And so if we have a park with overwhelmingly drowns out your crowd with thousands of people and a small majority of them do something illegal, it doesn't make sense that we're going to shut down the entire city's First Amendment rights to catch one person for the heinous crime of disorderly conduct in the second degree.
That's what they would do to us.
That does come back, though, to what you were saying earlier.
And it's wrong.
About managing the people in your own organization.
What?
Like, if you're in an organization around people, it would be good to encourage that they avoid.
Of course, and that's why we only encourage for peaceful. That was not our event, for one.
Okay.
I was there.
You were there, but it wasn't yours.
Yeah, it was not our event.
All right.
An event that we had was the Eclipse Hate March, where only 2 police officers showed up, and I think it's an example of when we had thousands of people, we marched to the streets, it's entirely peaceful, we come back, there's no problems.
Awesome.
And I think that is an example of what happens when we don't have people advocating for beating us up in the streets simply for being protesters.
Well, I mean, so you guys were in the same area. That's not wrong of you to be in the same area.
Who are you referring to as you guys?
All the people that were there protesting in the park.
On June 4th?
On June 4th.
We were separated.
They were separated even?
Yeah, by the police.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
There's a street, yeah.
Okay. Well, Joey, you plan events and different things, and then instantly there's like a counter protest that pops up, for an event that you're holding. Now, is there a line at which, at these rallies, that you feel like the Portland Resistance Group crosses any sort of lines?
I don't
we're
think
not
they
into
do
the
anything.
we don't do the counter protests.
I think,
Okay.
I think they have members that will not, as a group, will be in there. I mean, I've seen McKelvey there before. He'll show up there. I'm not saying he did anything wrong, but I know he rolls with them. My thing is just don't break the law. Okay. Go protest. I mean, that's beautiful about America. That is one great thing about Portland. That is one great thing about the West Coast. Go protest, take to the streets, but don't break the law and stop using hate and threats of violence to try to keep people off the streets. That's it. That's all I care about. When they, so you have 2 groups June 4th. You had the group that was all black bloc, right? All over there. A big chunk of them, 90% of them, yes. A big chunk of them are 90, and then you have the other group, Portland United Against Hate. All of them faces are uncovered, just protesting, having their own rally, showing their problem with what was going on. That's kind of the 2 different groups where I'm like, this group is the group that I agree with more, because their faces are uncovered. They have no intent of breaking the law, and they have no intent of using violence. And so,
I don't think that. I think a majority of the people that. So if we say 90% of this, how many people would you estimate were in that crowd?
In Chapman Square?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot.
Okay, so if we're saying that, let's say 1,000, maybe it's less, maybe it's more, 90% of them are wearing masks. Are we saying that 900 of them were committing crimes? So obviously if you wear a mask, that does not mean that you have the intent to commit a crime. What it means is that there are oftentimes people that follow you, and I know you know about this because I think it's happened to you as well, and it's happened to me, where you show up to somewhere and then all your information gets posted everywhere, and you might lose your job, you might have people at your doorstep, you might have flyering campaigns around your house. So I think that there are legitimate reasons. Me and you, we can't hide our face because people know who we are. But there are legitimate reasons for people who just want to show up there to hide their face to avoid putting their family through that, but still be able to show up.
Let me ask you a question though.
Yeah.
Why is it that no one in the park that I was in covered their faces?
I think that because they're proud to say what they're saying, and that they know that we're not going to be attacking them all on social media. And
so we don't get doxxed and
you would
go
know
after
more
our
about if you
jobs
get. I know that we have never
buy
doxed
Antifa.
you. So
No, not you. I'm just saying.
maybe
like,
you do. So would you not
we-
say? Wait, and there are people that cover their faces in your.
No.
Your security.
It's no. When they
Yeah, they
not
have
my
the
rallies.
camo.
No, we don't allow it.
I've
They've
seen
done
it.
it before, but that's not my rallies. Like Lake Oswego wasn't my rally.
No, but
Salem
I
wasn't
saw
my
it
rally.
on June 4th. There were
What's
people.
the primary reason to cover someone's face at these events? You're saying it's because they're afraid that they'll get doxxed in social media.
I think
and
so.
everything.
Well, for one, we have the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Portland that works with the Donald Trump administration. Obviously, is run by the Donald Trump administration. It works with the Portland Police Bureau. This is another example of big government that the right is actually okay with, while they claim to be for small government. So we have the Federal Joint Terrorism Task Force working with our Portland Police Department when we have not had a terrorist attack other than what they view as activists being called extremists. So I was at a protest once where I do not break windows. I've never broke a window, where the protest was deemed a riot, and then Jeff Sessions says that the people at those riots were domestic terrorists. So there are reasons to cover your face to be being surveilled as a domestic terrorist by the Joint Terrorism Task Force that are incredibly legitimate. And I would argue if you were a real libertarian, you would be arguing that the Joint Terrorism Task Force and Jeff Sessions should not be surveilling people in the city of Portland as domestic terrorists, or at all. The Portland Police Department has the resources where they can deal with what minimal terrorist threats that we actually have. Aside from that, you also have people that when arrests happen at protests, a lot of people, I think especially on the right, like to think that people that are arrested at a protest are arrested for a specific crime. What happens is when a protest is deemed to have had illegal activity, they will start arbitrarily grabbing whoever they grab. Then the arrest record comes out, the right gets a hold of that, and then puts out those people's information. Look at these rioters, look at these things. All the charges end up getting dropped because there is no evidence against these specific people. So when arrests happen at protests, they're completely arbitrary. It's not like we saw you commit disorderly conduct, so we're going to go get you. It's that there was disorderly conduct conducted at this march, you were at this march, and so we're grabbing whoever we can grab. And so there are reasons why you would want to hide your identity for many reasons so that the right doesn't get a hold of it and you have people calling your family. I mean, I've had like a death threat a day for November through January of this year. Now it's slowed down a little bit. I've had, you know, all sorts of signs on my door, sorts of things like that. I can't speak to what Joey's gone through, but I think it's similar, that basically when you are out there fighting for something in this country right now, people try and hurt you and your family, and I think that it's reasonable that people would take precautions to not be hurt by simply going out into the streets. Also, the Constitution says nothing about masks. So, I mean, there's no reason, well, we're talking about small and big government, there's no reason why your rights should be different because of your clothing, or that we should be thinking differently of you because of your clothing.
Okay. Well, you know, you're talking about I had death threats from this date all the way through, you know, it's like slowing down right now. Is there a death threat season, you think?
Yeah.
I think specifically after the election, things were more heated, and I was also arrested in November, and the police posted my address and my phone number and all these things. So
Oh, that was
I was
nice of
arrested
them.
too. I got rounded up just like you're complaining about. I mean, I agree with you.
where'd you get arrested?
I was running amongst the crowd during the protests. I got arrested the
So
third
you
and
agree
fourth
that
day.
they're arbitrary arrests?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so if I'm not Joey Gibson or Greg McKelvey and my information isn't already incredibly accessible, there are reasons why you wouldn't want your family to be subjected to what could happen if you are in those arrest records.
Yeah, I'm not arguing with that.
Okay.
But what I'm saying is, and there's a lot of things you're saying where you're talking about like Homeland Security and stuff. Like, listen, if there's any, one of the worst things that happened in our country was the Patriot Act, right, by Bush. Okay, the government should have no right without a warrant to spy on us, and so I'm totally against that. Okay, and if anyone says they're for limited government but is for spying on citizens without a warrant, they're fake and they're liars. Okay, and so I don't want you to be spied on. I don't want anyone to be spied on unless they have a warrant. They got to go through a judge.
What if you say you're for limited government but you're not for same-sex marriage?
I'm for anyone should be allowed to get married.
Yeah, he
so
covered that already.
consensual.
He covered that already by saying that's God's. You know, that's their.
But your
That's the
friends,
separation between-
that you hang out with that think that, I mean, I'm obviously not going
disagree
to
with
use the
them.
language that they have.
I disagree with them.
So,
but I don't have to.
what were you saying about people who say they believe in limited government but they actually don't?
Absolutely. There's people, that's probably one of the biggest problems with the conservative ideology.
Yeah.
Is sometimes they're for limited government, sometimes they're not. That's
Yeah.
why I'm not a conservative.
What about war?
Yeah, I'm against war. Like 99% of the time. All the wars that we've had in the last 10, 20 years or whatever is for big corporations to get what they need.
And do you know what percentage of our budget goes to war?
Too much.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
do you think
And our
that that would be
military.
better spent on things like healthcare here?
I'll tell you this much. Let's talk about that for a second. Because one of the biggest problems with the left, I believe, is they want to get money to spread around, but the way they want to do it is by raising taxes. If we get rid of all the corruption and all the stealing that's going on right now and all the wasteful spending, we will have a lot more money. We don't have to increase taxes.
If we did
can
not spend
decrease
money on
taxes.
defense
And other things.
outspend the 10 countries next to us on defense, we could spend that money here at home. But wouldn't you refer
not
to
just-
that as communism?
No, not necessarily.
No.
So
well-
that's what we advocate for, is providing for the least of these. And so that is not necessarily communism. That is just what a society can do. I mean, we all took the public roads here, right? I don't know if you went to public school. I went to public school. We play at public parks, right? We do all these things, and nobody is screaming socialism there. But if we extend it one more thing to maybe healthcare, then everybody starts screaming socialism and communism. But who was screaming socialism and communism when we built roads? And how much did it help the economy and help small business and help workers when we were able to build that infrastructure through taxation?
Yeah, but here's what I'm trying to say though. Number one, you look at our public schools are horrible. They're not good enough, and our government isn't the solution.
We should be spending more.
We spend more. Why? How are you're going to spend more money? It's just going to be people are just going to steal it. That's the thing. That's the thing that you have to understand.
I think I have more hope in humanity and the goodness that people have if we remove these negative circumstances that we have in our country. I think that
so we don't need government intervention if you have faith.
We
in
are
humanity.
the government. If we remove money from people, we are the government. So I don't understand how we are the Patriot movement, but we somehow hate the system that America has developed. So we are the Patriot movement, but we hate the Constitution and the laws that they were able to build to make the country that we have right now. So this is the system that we have in which we are entrusting the voters. So if we can trust the voters, then why are we against what they're able to build? Why are we
what's wrong with
against
Trump?
Why do we hate
Didn't the voters pick Trump?
The voters picked Trump. I've
So you don't
never
have faith
said
in the
that Trump.
voters?
I've never said that Trump is an illegitimate president. I think that at all times, I mean, the voters picked George Bush. I think that I wouldn't have made that pick, but America made that pick, and I think that in America, a republic, we have a obligation and a right to, at the local level, decide to resist the federal administration. And that's what people thought when we had Obama. The right thought that we had the right to do that. And now that it is us that are saying, let's resist the federal administration and push for local policies to insulate our cities and states from policies that we did not vote for. Now they're saying, well, this is a legitimate president, but they were not making that same point when Obama was president.
Okay, well, that's not me. I think you have a right to. I've hated every president we've had, so I totally agree with you on that. But
Lincoln?
What's that? No, I mean since I've been alive.
Oh, okay.
Well, not counting Reagan. Reagan was like I was born like halfway through, but
I've only had a couple presidents.
So, but let me ask you this. Here's my. So there's a lot of things that we can agree on, but let me ask you this: do you understand that government intervention is probably one of the biggest reasons why healthcare is so expensive? Drugs are expensive because of the FDA. All the medical community, so many things are expensive and take forever and are not efficient because of government intervention. A lot of those things, if we rolled back that stuff, medicine would be 10 times cheaper. It's not just getting healthcare for everyone. See, they're rigging the system. They're making the government's making drugs really expensive, and then they also want to control the healthcare insurance industry. The whole thing's rigged. That's what you have to understand.
Yeah,
And
we shouldn't have. Okay, you're not going to get me to advocate for Obamacare because I don't believe in Obamacare because it gives too much money to the drug corporations and too much power to the drug corporations. It gives too much money and power to the insurance companies. I don't think that health insurance should even be a thing. I mean, the reason why you buy car insurance is because you might crash, right? Yeah. Everybody gets sick. So there's no reason to have insurance for something that everybody is going to have to use. You buy homeowners insurance because you might have a flood, right? But everybody gets sick. The fact that we're giving so much money to these insurance companies and to the drug corporations is, I think, what drives up the cost of healthcare in this country. And Obamacare might do that, but I don't think that programs that my organization that is advocating for would be giving that money to the drug companies and to the insurance companies.
Yeah, that's good. They should go to the people and let them spend the money. Let them go to their doctor.
We have a system for that called government. You go to the people, let them spend their money through their votes. That's what that's what America is for. So if we remove what separates the people of America from their government, which I believe is mostly money, then the people are more in control of their government and they can be trusted to make decisions on their local schools, to make decisions on their health care.
So you believe in school choice?
I believe in voting and then a personal school choice.
Yeah.
That's not democracy.
No, I mean, do you think that a parent should get to choose which public school their child goes to?
That's not an issue that I care that much about.
So what about the kids who are in the ghetto and they're forced to go to a bad school?
Yeah, I think we should spend money to make that school not bad. And I think it should be up to the voters to be able to allocate the funds and able to do that. And if we have a more informed population, we remove the barriers that separate people from their government, they will be able to make better decisions to make their schools better for the people that are there. No, I don't think any kid should be forced to go to a bad school. And I think a reason why a lot of these schools are bad, especially in Oregon, which has to do with our property taxes and the way that we tax and things like that, has to do with the fact that they don't have enough money. They have old textbooks. And I think that money can't solve every single problem, but money will fix the road outside if it's broken, right? And I think the same thing can be applied to a school that has problems such as in Portland, where we have lead in the pipes, where we have books that are too old, where we have buildings that could fall down if we have an earthquake. These problems can be solved just like a road that's outside we can solve by spending money to fix it. Government is not the most efficient way to fix that pothole right now, and I think that is because we have allowed for corporations and companies to have a stranglehold on how government is able to do this.
Yeah, except the fact that you can buy 1,000 new books for school. It's not going to help them.
I know, we should also have better teachers.
But you can't get better teachers because of the unions. You can't fire teachers.
So what do you think fixes education? Is you think privatization and capitalism will fix schools?
Competition will fix schools.
Why does that not apply to other things such as roads?
Because they're not humans.
Roads? They're fixed by humans.
No, but I'm saying, like, when you're talking about teaching children,
okay,
you're talking about these are organizations that are alive and organic and moving and have people. Okay, it's a system. They have to compete. These schools have to compete. Teachers don't even have to do a good job. They can't get fired. Like, the whole system's broken. A road's different. A road's just there. You can go and you can fix it.
What about healthcare?
Number one, the biggest problem with our healthcare system is that costs are too high. We don't talk about that enough, okay? So I do believe we can have a system, but here's what I'm trying to say.
Who's driving the cost of the costs are being driven because there are people that are greedy and want more money for themselves, the corporations that are running this. There's a reason why drug companies are charging more for things when their CEOs are making billions of dollars. The CEOs are going up and up in their wages, and the wages for everybody else is staying stagnant, and we're sitting there calling that capitalism. Capitalism does not mean that it should be completely, exactly.
Because they own the government. They're buying out the government, and they're picking and choosing which drugs get passed and which don't. That's the problem with our government right now. It's too big, it's too powerful, and the big corporations are benefiting from it.
I think that the problem is the corporations.
Because they're buying out the government, and they're picking and every single time you increase regulations, it helps out the rich, it hurts the poor. Do you understand that? That's why all the regulations that are being passed in the last 10, 15 years have helped the rich and helped big business.
That is not true where you have Flint, Michigan, where people don't have water. That's not true where people work.
Let me ask you this. Do you believe that our government's bought and paid for by a big corporation?
In a systematic level? Or every single individual within the government?
No, I mean, is it fair to say that big corporations have a hold of our government?
That's what happens with unfeathered capitalism, correct?
Okay, so you would agree that the government's going to pass regulations that's going to help the big corporations?
Which is why we should remove money from our politics, correct?
Exactly.
All right, well, first off, I want to say that lead water tastes delicious. Secondly, I want to ask you, Gregory, and then we'll go to Joey on this, because we're going to be wrapping up pretty soon. But what's
fun.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm having a good time.
It's fun.
Talking about lead water and different stuff. So now I want to ask you, what's one of the main issues that we need to be focusing on right now in our society or in our government that's a huge concern at the moment?
Oh, there's so many. I think that we've
What's your favorite?
Removing money from politics, making sure that everybody has a basic standard of living in a country that is the richest country in the history of the world. And I think specifically in Portland, strengthening sanctuary so we're not rounding up and deporting our neighbors, our friends. Well, not Joey's friends, but my friends.
Okay.
What about you, Joey?
Yeah.
For me, like I said, one of the biggest things is I want to bring respect back into the country, having respect for one another, having love for one another, regardless of your political belief. I think there's too much hatred that's being justified in the name of social justice or other things. That's really important to me. And then obviously for me, the thing that I hate, the establishment, I hate the corruption, I hate the deception in our government. That's really important to me. And like I said, I do want to get money out of politics. Unfortunately, people will always illegally get money, so that's not going to solve it completely. And that's why I'm huge. I'm going to focus a lot on term limits and going after the establishment on both the right and the left. The Hillary Clintons, the Maxine Waters, the John McCains, these people got to go. They got to go. I would rather a new, fresh Democrat win and beat out an establishment Republican any day. Any day. Like I said, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. And so I think we got to let go of the labels as if all Democrats are good and all Republicans are bad, or vice versa. So.
Okay, there's a lot of labels out there right now.
Can I ask a question?
Of course, please do.
Well, it's just he mentioned that his organization is working on developing policies, and you're writing bills and stuff like that. Are you guys at that phase in your development yet?
No, we're not going to be doing any sort of nothing in terms of bills. I'm not going to do anything in terms of telling people who to vote for. I am going to, next year I will be attacking establishment politicians. Patriot Prayer is going to stay out of, after the primaries, we're not going to get involved in telling people who to vote for. You know, we want, and to be honest, like I said earlier, no one cares. Like, that's what we need to understand as a country. Like, no one cares who you think they should vote for. People are smart enough to go out and decide things for themselves. But we will continue to attack the establishment, and then we will do what we can to promote term limits. But Patriot Prayer is more about our culture and free speech.
Okay. Well, you know, I feel that there has been a lot of mutual respect at this table. I think it's really nice. All right. So I'd like to thank you, Gregory. Thank you, Joey, for coming on the show and taking the time to meet with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
All right.
Thanks.
Great. Yeah.